For over 150 years, Sacramento observed August 12th as its birthday, which is incorrect. Let me explain. Why did Sacramento observe August 12th as its birthday? Well, it's on August 12th, 1839 that John Sutter arrived here at this area near the confluence of the Sacramento and American Rivers. It is true, Sacramento celebrated August 12th as its birthday. In 1939, they celebrated 100 years with a centennial. It was a month-long celebration here in Sacramento. In 1989, Sacramento celebrated 150 years, and here's actually a poster from the event. I keep this in my office to show just how far we have moved as an institution over time. Why is this incorrect? Well, that's because Sacramento wasn't founded until January 1849, 10 years later. We were celebrating 10 years off in all these different celebrations. And by the way, is August 12th even a day to celebrate? It is on August 12th, 1839 that John Sutter arrived at the confluence of the Sacramento and American Rivers. He didn't come with a large landing party. It was himself, 10 Hawaiians. Sutter went to Hawaii before coming to California. 3 sailors and a large bulldog. That was Sutter's landing party. He claimed this area of the Sacramento Valley as his. Land that had been inhabited for thousands of years, since time immemorial, by the Nisenan, Miwok, and Maidu native people. Those are the large tribal groups in this area. However, in 1839, John Sutter wrote that there was at least 30 different villages here in this direct area of the land that he will claim as his. Some of the village names are the Momoy, Sakum, Hawk, Sama, Kadima, Omachumne, Kasumne, Makolumne, and the largest village at the confluence of the Sacramento and American Rivers, the Pasuni village. These village groups that will actually come and work at this place through fear, intimidation, and bribery over the 1840s, and will build Sutter's fort and made up at least 80% of the workforce at any point in that decade. Now, John Sutter wasn't the first European American to come to this area. You have in 1808, Gabriel Moraga actually explores this area. He will actually name the Rio de Sacrament that we know the Sacramento River as today. You have Jedediah Smith is here in the winter of 1828 trapping beaver off the river a mile north of here, so significant that the Mexican government will rename that river the Rio de los Americanos, the American River. You have in 1833, the Hudson's Bay Fur Company actually comes to the Sacramento Valley to establish a fur desert. They were looking to, at the tail end of the fur trapping industry, the fur trapping was on a decline. They were looking to create a fur desert here in the Pacific Northwest, meaning that they were going to trap every fur-bearing animal that they could find, predominantly beaver. And coming to the valley, they will introduce malaria into this area in 1833. And between 1833 and 1834, almost 70% of the indigenous native population will die of malaria. About 50% of fur trappers will die that year from malaria as well in the Pacific Northwest, predominantly in this area. So when John Sutter arrives here on August 12th, 1839, this is a completely different area. You have some villages that had been wiped out by disease, some villages incredibly impacted by disease. You have in 1834 as well, the fall of the mission system. You have ex-mission natives that have escaped Mission San Jose have moved to the Sacramento Valley. They're looking to get as far away as possible from the mission system. John Sutter arrives here 5 years after all of that. And he ends up taking advantage of the situation. Over the early years, in 1840, the building that I'm in, the central building, construction begins, becomes the main central hub of a land grant that John Sutter will get in 1841 that he names New Helvetia. And by 1844, Sutter's Fort is completed. And Sutter's Fort was the agricultural and manufacturing hub of that land grant. Sutter will encourage European American immigration to this area, which will cause further changes to the valley. This place, though, is truly a catalyst of change in the 1840s of California. It is this place that will accelerate a series of events that will lead to California's statehood on September 9th, 1850, especially after James Marshall will find gold about 40 miles east of here at Sutter's Mill. But this place is responsible for dramatically changing the lives of the native population here in this area and the environmental landscape. Sutter's Fort today, we're not celebrating 186 years later Sutter's Landing, but we are remembering it. I've been here for almost 12 years now. I was working here at Sutter's Fort when California State Parks commemorated the 175th anniversary of Sutter's Landing. It wasn't a celebration. It wasn't Sacramento's birthday. It's a commemoration of Sutter's Landing. But here we are 186 years later after Sutter arrived here. I can tell you it's definitely important to remember these dates in history. These are dates that define the history of Sutter's Fort. It defines the history of Sacramento. It defines the history of California. But it's important that history is ever evolving as more perspectives are shared, especially from more diverse groups, so we can have a more holistic understanding of our past. Sutter's Landing is not something to be celebrated. It is not something that should be commemorated. It is a date that should be observed and remembered. And moving forward, this is the history of Sutter's Fort and our approach to the history of this site. This place has a very complicated history, that I encourage you to read more about, especially as more perspectives are shared. We encourage you to come and visit Sutter's Fort. We're open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. We have our major events on the third Saturday of each month. We'd love for you to visit and discuss this history more with you in the future.